evening, Book War followers. Hopefully we find you enjoying your Sunday afternoon and evening. If you were in Minnesota, you enjoyed the warm weather, though it was windy today. So we are just waiting for Miss Hattie to pop on here. She'll be here in just a second. Except we are going to be, maybe. Except, there we go.
Yay!
Oh, wait, hold on. Hi!
Did we work?
No, okay. I was hitting things wrong. So okay. I think it's all good.
Okay. Woohoo!
Woo! First try. We're doing, that's like two times in a row.
That's 2 weeks in a row that it worked the first time. We're going to jinx ourselves, though, by like calling it out.
I mean, now we're right. Yeah, it'll never happen again.
It'll never happen again now, yeah.
So I was just saying tonight's theme / topic is our soapboxes. Some of them, because there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them. Yes, there are.
So, but some of our soapboxes around reading. And Hattie has a list. So,
because we talked about this, because we have so many that we knew that if we didn't like rein it in, we would go crazy. So what I thought we should start with, sort of ease ourselves into it on our lighter stuff, so we don't go crazy from the get-go, would be sort of like pet peeves about books that we read a lot, like genres that we read a lot.
Sure.
So that I was thinking, so for me, I'll just like start it off, and then I'm sure you'll think of yours while I'm talking, because you know what mine is. One of mine is anyway. So as Hannah knows, and anybody who pays any attention to the Book War, I read a ton of history. Yes, you do. And I tend towards women's history, just generally speaking. And one of my gigantic pet peeves in history, particularly history about women, is when books are like being presented as a history of a particular woman. And this is most common previous like histories that are like earlier than like modern history, right? So I'm talking like before like
when you're talking like Cleopatra, or
like Cleopatra, or you're doing anything like in the Middle Ages, right? And what ends up happening, and there's a legitimate reason, and I will get to that, but what ends up happening is these books are sort of, advertised as histories of these women, but what ends up happening in these books is these are histories of the men around that particular woman, right? This makes me crazy. It literally makes me nuts. Hannah's heard this rant so many times.
But it's always still good, because it's an excellent rant.
And like I said, yeah, there is a legitimate reason for why this happens, okay? Because in history, up until very modern times, even like 1900, even that modern, like women didn't write. Right. Generally speaking, some women did, of course, right? But generally speaking, they didn't write their own stuff down, and the men certainly were not writing any of the women's stuff down. Okay, so we do have like a sort of, there are not a lot of historical documents, right? There's not a lot of sort of like primary source material for women in history. So these books do sort of suffer from having to use the documents from the time periods where men were writing everything down, and it was all about them, right? They didn't really, and we don't have the female voices, right? So there, while there is this very legitimate reason for why these, women's history books end up being about the men around whatever particular woman there is, it still makes me crazy, because these books really are being sort of like presented as,
this is about,
the history and life of thus and such, female person, and you read it and you're like, okay, literally they mentioned her like a half a dozen times in this like 350 page, book that's supposed to be all about this woman.
Yeah. Good job.
So that's one of my big ones. While I understand why this happens, I just wish that they were presented differently to the person picking them up. Because that's really irritating. When I think, I'm like, I don't know that much about this woman, I'm gonna like pick this book up and like find out about her. No, you don't. I pick this book up and I find out about all the men around her. Super irritating. Super easy. So that's
fun.
also one of mine. Like, and that's in a genre that is near and dear to my heart. I read tons of history, nonfiction history. I love it. But that is definitely one that rankles me when I pick something up thinking I'm gonna learn about, this historical woman, and she gets mentioned like six times in the book.
Yeah.
Super
That is
frustrating.
annoying. That is super annoying.
Yeah.
So I have to kind of think about this, but like a genre that is near and dear to my heart is fantasy, particularly. Like I do love fantasy, and it kind of is my my go-to genre when I just want something good and fun. I think one of my pet peeves around the fantasy genre, and this is very personal.
Okay.
This is like deeply me, not at all like the fantasy world loves this.
Okay.
I hate
You
it.
hate it. Okay. Okay.
I hate series that go beyond 4 books.
Like 3 or 4.
Like,
yeah.
I mean,
He does.
3 is like really it. 4, like if you're good enough, I might. I mean, it has happened. I have like one of my favorite series is 4.
Okay.
But like if it's past that, I am just out.
Yeah.
Like I mean, and the fantasy world loves this. And so this is a purely like this is a pure Hannah thing where I just first off, that's just a lot of commitment. You're asking for a lot of commitment from me. And I honestly I have commitment issues in all aspects of my life.
Yeah, that's true.
So no, I don't like any of these people that much to spend this amount of time with.
That's a lot of time.
I will tell you that I had to stop reading Game of Thrones. I did read Game of Thrones. I had started it.
Yeah.
Long before the movies.
Oh, yeah. You read it a long time ago, like when George was reading it. I mean, like, 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
But by the 3rd book, I'm like, and they're huge. They're huge.
So fat. They're
and I'm like,
every one of them,
I don't like, and that's the other thing that happens a lot in fantasy series is like, the characters become so unlikable and like, why do I want to read this? This is miserable and there's no arc. It's just bleh. So I really struggle. And there will be series, very popular series. A lot of YA ones right now are out. And some of those authors have moved into adult fantasy that I just refuse to even start because it's too long. There's too much. You're asking too much of me. And since you just decided that that was something that was worth my time, I'm just choosing to say, no, it's not, straight up, even without ever trying. And that is about me, not necessarily about them. But there is so much great literature out there. And I would say it does frustrate me sometimes that it's really hard to find a standalone fantasy book. Like, I just want one. Can I just have, like, a book?
One great story.
Like, one great story that just, like, is encapsulated. And I've told Hattie this, too. Which, one of the things I don't mind when everybody's dead at the end.
You love when everybody's dead at the end.
It doesn't upset me when everybody's dead at the end because then you can't go further. We're done. We're done. Like,
story is over.
It's done. They're all dead. So that is and it is so prevalent in the just fantasy in general. And it is not my it's not my thing. This is also why I do not read comic books. I realized it took me a while to figure out
forever. Oh my God,
why I don't like comic books because I love graphic novels. I've committed to many of them. I mean, they're so short, like that kind of serialness doesn't bother me. I'm like, what is it about comic books? And I picked up the newer Black Panther ones, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna like this. I'm gonna get into that. It's in my Ta-Nehisi Coates, for goodness sakes. Like, I'm gonna like.
It's gonna be great.
No. But the reason I don't like them is because they're a never-ending world, and I don't actually care for that. It is asking for way too much of my time and energy and care, and I just no thank you. No. I mean, good for people who love him, and I know, like, my husband, oh my God,
he loves
like the whole
he's got like shelves worth of like the series, different series, doesn't he?
And like the Dune series, like and like that's a whole other thing. I don't mean to get into that, but like it starts like way back in history up to like the actual Dune, and then it goes like forward too. Dune is like somewhere in the middle or towards the end. And he has them all. All of them.
He loves that. Wow.
He loves it. And he has this expeditionary force this like 15 novels at this point, and I'm just like, I read the first 3. I mean, I like the first one. I enjoy it. I think it's funny. But I'm like, that is a lot of commitment.
Yeah.
I'm like, aren't they dead yet? Is it like? He's like, no, they have kids, and they're like starting to like get grandkids. I'm like, oh my god, I can't. Like that doesn't even like interest me. No, thank you.
It's so epic because that's what I was thinking though too, Hannah. Because I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking, I was just as you were talking, and like I totally understand like your commitment
Mm-hmm.
issues, and like this is just too much. But I could also see for a lot of people how this would actually be really comforting.
Yes.
Right? They don't have to learn a whole new fantasy world.
Nope.
Right? They don't have to learn a
Yep.
whole new base of
Yep.
characters. It's like the story is just they already
Mm-hmm.
have like this framework,
Yep.
and then they're just
Yep.
getting a new story out
Yep.
of it. And I could absolutely see and understand why
Yes.
that's very
Absolutely.
appealing
Yes.
to people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And why it works so well in fantasy
In
as well.
certain, yeah,
Because
in
of that
certain
world
genres. Yeah.
building. And once you have
Yeah.
that world,
Yeah.
it's very easy to put
Like
stories into it.
Yeah. Tell stories in there. Yeah.
I can't remember who this was. I just remember it's a trilogy, but what I loved about it, it was the same story, but told from 3 very distinct perspectives.
Oh,
Like,
that is
so
interesting.
and it kind of covered most of the same time, a little bit on both sides. And
Mm-hmm.
I loved that.
That
Like,
is interesting.
and Alison Krogan, oh gosh, I've just lost it. It's a set of 4. And that one too does that a little bit, not quite as much. There's a real
Yeah.
protagonist still through the whole thing. But I do that one I actually read it on my Kindle, I
Mm-hmm.
think, which is why I've never been able to find it again. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. You're like, dang it.
I remember reading it, and I
Yeah.
remember loving this, and then I was like, oh god, I don't know what that is. I really should find it again.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it was only a trilogy. Trilogies I'll give a
It's only
go,
3.
and
Hannah can
books
handle
of
it.
4 I will start, and if I just don't care, then I don't care enough, and
Yeah.
that's
You're
fine.
like, yeah, I'm done.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I can't do anything past 4 books anymore.
Yeah. That's fair.
There's too much great literature out there, so no,
Yeah.
I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I can
That is
totally get that. And it actually kind of leads into sort of our next one is
oh yeah.
that Hannah and I were talking about like all of our soapboxes the other day. And one of the other ones was like the reasons why both Hannah and I kind of like avoid reading stuff that like everybody reads. So I'm thinking like super popular authors that everybody loves and is reading, or like really like pulp fiction-y kind of stuff. And it just made me think of this as a nice segue, Hannah, because you're sort of talking about how like everybody in fantasy really loves this about
Right.
it, right? Like a
Mhm.
lot
Right.
of the readers.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
for you, it's sort of this like,
Right.
I'm over it,
Well, I
kind
mean,
of
it's
thing.
even like classic, right? Like, let's just talk about J.R.R. Tolkien for a minute,
Sure.
right? Like,
Yeah.
what is understood as classic, we're going to put that in air quotes, right?
That's like
it's
just
a very,
classic white,
yeah, it's a very white European
Okay.
understanding of classic.
Classic,
But,
yeah.
but people love it, like, love the Silmarillion and love going into this history and, like, what
Yeah.
they're doing with Rings of Power,
Rings of
which
Power, yeah.
is really exploring the lore and this world in different places. And I'm just like, why? I'm just like, yeah, I mean,
I was like, why?
okay, I guess. Like, let's just, I
Yeah.
know. And I know that Gerald Tolkien wrote languages. Like, I understand the nerd
He was
that
kind of
this
intense.
is.
Yeah.
And, like, and I get it. And I love language. But, I mean, I wasn't going to write my own, like, just to be able to write a
You're not going to
fantasy
learn like
novel.
Elvish so you can read the whole
No,
thing
no,
and
I'm not. But
write Elvish poetry
yeah.
and whatnot.
But, yes, I do get it. I
Yeah.
just don't ascribe to
No.
said commitment.
Got it. Got it.
But this is also why, for me, I think, because we were talking about, like, we do it out of, was this the one that we were talking about our motivations are different?
Yeah, we were talking about, like, our motivations, because our motivations are very different on this for, like, why neither one of us, like, likes or embraces sort of, like, pulp fiction or, like, really popular authors or, like, whatever that it book of the moment is.
Or it author of the moment, yes. And so what was yours? You tell me again.
Okay, yeah.
I can't remember.
So my Hannah knows what hers is. I do too.
I'm pretty sure I know
what
mine.
But mine really, I don't trust people. I literally like people in large numbers. Like the more people who tell me something is good, usually the less I believe that it's going to be good. If I have like a few close friends who I trust say that this is worth a read, then I will like put it on my TBR list. If like everyone in the United States is like, this book is amazing and everybody must read it right now, then I'm like, I will never read that book because it's junk. Right.
And
Yeah.
too many times that has proven true for you and your reading tastes.
Yes. It isn't even just like on principle. It is slightly on principle. It's like 50% on principle, 50% on experience.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
or I've
Because you have
actually
time.
read the thing that
Yeah.
everybody says you must read. And
Yep.
I'm like, wow, that was crap.
Right. Or certainly not worth this
Yeah, definitely not
hullabaloo.
worth all of the hoopla.
Yeah.
And the 20,000 recommendations, you know, like just like not worth that. It was like, okay, that was a fine book, or wow, that was crap. Like usually that's what it is. Either like, okay, that was fine,
Fine.
or wow,
Yeah.
junk.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
so I just feel like for me, it's very much like I don't trust people
Right.
in large numbers. And the larger the number gets, it's usually like then the more skeptical I get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And tell me if I'm wrong about my own reasoning, but I think I think what we talked about, and like for me, my motivation for like just refusing is it is out of a pure like disestablishment knee-jerk reaction to anything that I'm told I should read. Like,
Yeah.
you'll love it. Read it. It's so good. Like, you tell me I'm supposed to, I will just say no out of pure spite.
Just spite.
And like,
Just spite.
I can't pretend that it's anything more. Here's my I will pretend for a minute.
Okay, pretend
The
for
other
a
reason
moment.
that I don't like my justification that's actually appropriate about this is it's like they don't need my time or my dollars.
That's
like if they're
true
being
too. That
told
is
like,
true. Yeah.
you know, you're a New York Times bestseller, you've done
You're
the
fine.
things like the establishment, the publishing establishment, or in the case of I'll talk about Fourth Wing in a minute, or the TikTok establishment, the
Right.
TikTok book talk establishment, or the Bookstagram establishment. Like if they have lifted you up, I'm like, you don't need me.
You don't need me to read.
You don't need me to like promote you. You don't need me to like read you. You don't need my money. You don't need my dollars or my time or any of that kind of that sort of support. And I do try. I'm not perfect at it. Don't get me wrong, but I do try to. I mean, I buy way more books than is appropriate.
Yeah, she does.
But to buy books that are putting my money where my values are when it comes to books, which they just don't need mine. Like they're getting it anyway. So you're never gonna see me read a Colleen Hoover or a Sarah Moss out of the fantasy world.
Oh, okay.
But I did buy this weekend at the Half Price Bookstore. I bought Fourth Wing, which Hattie doesn't know anything about this book. Fourth Wing is the book of 2023 in the fantasy world. If I remember correctly, and I might have this wrong, but I do believe it was a book talk book that came to fruition out of like, you know, not global, but like crowdsourcing, right? Like the crowd,
like
like
a
this
GoFundMe kind of a sort of situation,
kind of
right?
thing. Like, you know, it got put out there and like people were like, no, this needs to get published, and then it did get published. And, like, and so, but everybody was reading it in 2024, like, or 2023. It was like the book. It was the fantasy book, and I'm like, I'm not reading the book. And then what's happened is literally in the last 3 months, I've had one friend who we read, she knows my tastes and she knows my like annoyances. And she's like, Hannah, I really liked it. I actually really liked it. I was like, okay, good, okay. And then there's a librarian on Instagram whose name Michael. I think his name is Michael, the librarian. Anyway, he also has recommended it. And I'm like,
oh boy.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll have to give it a go. And then it was actually one of the favorites of the books that we got for the people who entered the the book giveaway for February. And I was like, okay, maybe that's a sign. And then I was at the store yesterday and it was on, you know, a secondhand book, and I was like,
you bit the bullet.
Give it a try. There's at least a duology. I'm not 100% sure because, again, like, you know, once it got popular, I was like, oh, I don't care about that.
Yeah. You're like, ignore.
I know it's so bad.
So true.
Again, out of pure spite. Like there's, I can pretend that there's other reasons, but it's not really other reasons.
It's not really other reasons. Those are just like the nice reasons that you tell yourself when you don't feel like admitting like the truth.
But
you know,
it's the same reason I don't read classics. Like Hattie makes us read a classic every year in our book club, which I'm grateful for.
She's gonna love this one too. By the way, I just want to tell everybody that Hannah's. I think of all the classics that we've read for our book club, we're reading Brooklyn. What is it?
Tree Grows in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. Thank you, Hannah. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And I honestly think Hannah will like, not just tolerate, I actually think you will like this book.
I haven't. I'm trying to remember. I mean, I've hated some classics. Don't get me wrong. I've hated some classics that we've read, but I don't think any of the ones we've done for book club.
No, we did the
Frankenstein last year, which is like,
that's a great book. For just like reasons beyond, the writing is brilliant, but there's just so many other like reasons that story.
There's so many layers to that book.
The Mango Street one, that was
the House on Mango Street.
That one,
and that
one was really interesting. That was.
It was well worth the read. It was a very genre bending book as well, which I liked.
Yeah, it was.
I always enjoyed the genre bending, and it was small, and
it was a skinny one. Yeah.
You will never see me with Moby Dick. I will never read it.
No, I haven't even read Moby Dick. I mean, there's some that just are sort of like, there's a point where it's like, it's just like almost too, like, I don't want to say cliche but it sort of becomes that way.
Yeah, it almost comes out cliche, right? Yeah. Like, oh, I've read all the classics. No. Yeah. You haven't. And some of them aren't worth it. But yeah, but it is that same motivation of like, I've been told I'm supposed to, and I don't want to. So no, I won't.
Yeah. And I will read classics. I don't mind reading classics, although I'm a little picky about which ones I read.
Yeah, you are.
But I don't mind reading them because I do think that they actually, like, they have value. To me, they have value because they do sort of speak to, like, the moment in which they were written, right?
I was thinking, like, from a historical perspective, I think you were interested in, like, what is the historical perspective of this classic and why it has become a classic. Like, you find that intellectually stimulating in your reading. Right. And I think you read Middlemarch, for God's sakes.
I did read Middlemarch because it was like, but I hadn't read any George Eliot, and like George Eliot is really sort of like foundational for like women writers and this sort of stuff, which like that's a very important thing as well. And so I wanted
to like Mrs. Dalloway the other day. I'm going to read Mrs. Dalloway.
Mrs. Dalloway, yeah, I have read Mrs. Dalloway. Yep,
I haven't read that one yet either.
Yeah, I mean, and there's some that are like super great stories, and there's some that I think are like they were received at a different time by people with different circumstances, right? Different historical contexts. And so the way they were received, when they were written, it was going to be a very different thing than like how we consume them, however many years later. But I do think that they all sort of speak to a moment in time, and that can be just like, for me, not everybody, obviously, but like for me, that's actually a very sort of like interesting thing. To kind of like just sort of be a part of that, just like while you're reading. Like I find that really interesting and intriguing, and that's also why I'm a little picky about which ones I read too, because like some of them are like, okay, I'm just not really that interested.
I don't care that much. I don't care. Yeah. So speaking of that, though, I will say this is another one of my soapboxes about a particular book, and this will rub a lot of people the wrong way. But I think anybody
with this one
has followed us knows that this is not a book I enjoyed. But I think its popularity spoke to a particular moment in time and what we hadn't experienced collectively yet. So Stephen King's The Stand.
Here we go.
Is a book that I would like my 32 hours worth of reading.
Like my time.
Back. Yeah. I would like to reclaim that time, and I do not get to.
No, you don't.
I need my time. So I had read The Institute when it came out. Like it was like 2019, it was before the pandemic.
Okay.
And I really liked it. I actually didn't go to work one day because I was reading it and I wanted to finish it. I was like so engrossed. And I was like, oh, the Stephen King is like, oh, this is really interesting. It was the first Stephen King I'd ever read. Because he's very, very popular.
Very popular.
So I never read it.
Very popular. We all know that.
I knew he was very genre. He does lots of different genres. He wasn't just horror. I super knew that. I found that particular book, I found it entertaining. Like it wasn't like a groundbreaking thing, but I found it really entertaining and engrossing. So I put out,
that's great.
Like, what should I read? What Stephen King should I read? And the two that came back were The Stand and then 1968. It was the year that I should know this. I'm really sorry, guys.
What happened?
But it was the year that Kennedy was assassinated. 62. So I was wrong on all of that.
It was 62 or 63, I think.
So anyway,
60s, not late 60s.
Yeah. And both of them are like
big fat
huge, by the way.
Stephen King I was like, is kind of a fan of the big fatty.
Yeah. He does have some short ones. The Green Mile. Yeah. There are some short ones.
I'm just saying, but generally they're
pretty fatty. So I decided to read The Stand because I think it was right before the new show was coming out as well. And I knew I mean, we'd have been hearing about that,
Yeah.
and so many people liked it, and I was like, okay, this seems like a formative text. And I mean, for people, like formative for people. And it was such a slog for me.
Yeah.
And honestly, slight spoilers if you haven't read it and you really want to, halfway through that book, I was like, can they all die? Can we all be dead? Can we just blow everything up because these people are obnoxious and I don't like them and I don't care what happens to any of them? At that point, I was just like, I don't like any of you. I mean, and I don't know why. I don't think Stephen King is bad at character development. He cannot be. Like, I don't think that.
Obviously he's not, but yeah.
Yes, obviously he's not, but I don't know what it was. And then by the end, when that is kind of what happens at the end of the book, I was like,
Yeah.
you've done that like 500
pages earlier.
So, it was a really not fun book for me. And I do think part of that is, though, like, where you get lost. I think it was a particular moment in time in a zeitgeist of like what we had experienced and what we had understood as like disease and the apocalypse and the end of times, and particularly because of disease. And like, I think he painted a whole world that nobody had really painted in that detail. But like by 2020 or 2019, when I read it, it'd been painted. And I wasn't finding it at all engaging for that reason. And that's like not on Stephen King or anybody who loves that book.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people like grew up with that book and like it is deep in their souls of a favorite book. And so I don't really mean to be dismissive of that because I have some of those as well.
Oh yeah. Well, we all do. I mean, and this is honestly like this is us like complaining about our own, but these are just like personal things, right? These aren't like
super
categorical, like we should throw Stephen King out,
right.
You know, like.
And let's just remember that I also don't like a tome. Like my longest book,
you don't.
Like, no. I'm a good 350, 400 pages. Like maybe I'll go to 500 every once in a while. But like that book is like 800 pages.
It's a long.
And I think I read the extended version because it was like the 20-year anniversary of it, and it was like that was the one that was. And I was like, oh my god. So there was like extra parts in it, and there was parts I was like, I don't know what parts got cut, but something needed to get cut, Steve.
Like that was too much. That one was too much.
That one was too much for me.
That was too much, And just one sort of, we're almost at 8:30, but I did want to just go off on our little tangent, because you got your big one in, so I'm going to get one of my big ones in. So Hannah and I, we do, in our book club that we run, we do try to do like a lot of different genres. We try to be pretty diverse inclusive in the genres that we pick. And one of the genres that we try to pick every year is memoir. And this is one of the hardest ones for both of us. We have a really hard time with memoirs. Although this year's memoir was quite fantastic. I don't know, did you finish it yet?
Oh, no, I'm on I started it yesterday. I'm on page 40.
Oh, okay. It's quite good, and I actually think everyone I think in our book club is going to like it. And I thought it was like, of memoirs, it was definitely like a good one. Yeah, it really was. That's Gone, by the way, I didn't actually say the name of the book. It's called Gone, A Girl, a Violin, a Life Unstrung by Min Kim. Okay, good job, Han, thanks. But generally speaking, we do not like memoirs as a thing. And the particular kind of memoirs that both Hannah and I really buck at are like celebrity memoirs. We have a really hard time. And I don't know why Hannah doesn't like them, but I literally, I cannot imagine why anyone would want to read, like, I'm just going to say it, Britney Spears' memoir. Like, and I know everyone in the world has read it. I know that. I know.
Well, and it's supposed to be really good, actually. It's supposed to be one of the better ones, but
I know. I literally cannot think of a book I'm less interested in picking up.
We are a culture obsessed with celebrity. So, like, I understand and culturally why people read these and like why they're drawn to them. And like there was the one about the guy who played Draco Malfoy that came out just a couple years
Yeah.
ago.
I can't think.
Um,
Tom Felton is his name.
Tom Felton, and I think people who loved Harry Potter, like it was a way to go back into that moment in time. I think like the Spare or
Oh,
Spare One or whatever that
yeah.
one
I
was.
think yeah,
I
Spare. I don't know, but yeah.
I certainly understand the impulse towards the celebrity and like, oh, like what is that life like? But the ones that I have picked up mostly have been by comedians because I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, at least it's funny.
Yeah.
I still don't love
You
them.
like still don't love them.
Tiffany Haddish's I liked,
Mm-hmm.
but
I
has
read that
become
one too, and
problematic.
I liked it.
Yeah,
At least it was funny. Yeah.
it was funny, but I tried to read Kevin Hart's. I could not
Mm.
get through it. I read Ali Wong's for the girls. I think it was something like that, and it was kind of like okay, it was not at all. And I think for me, the celebrity, this is so mean. I just want to say like I understand how mean and insensitive what I'm about to say is.
Yeah.
I do know that. But most celebrity memoirs feel to me like, oh, well, we might as well make money doing this as well. Or this is kind of like what Dancing with the Stars was to like reboot my career
Yeah.
so that my name's out there again.
Yeah.
And that is not interesting to me. Like that, once again, you don't need my money. You don't need my
I know,
vote.
right? Like
You
you don't
don't,
need my money. You're
I
fine.
don't,
Yeah.
I'm going to vote you off the island of my island. Like I'm voting you off that
I mean,
island. Like
that's probably also why I kind of buck against it because there is a
right.
sort of like, okay, you know what, Britney Spears is fine. She doesn't need
Yeah.
my like
Yeah.
$12 or whatever.
Yeah.
Hardback's probably like
Yeah.
$30. She's all
And
set.
I think people, for particularly around the celebrity, and I can't think of a celebrity that I love this much that I would read their memoir, but just because I loved
Yeah.
them. Um, but I think when people have like connected to a celebrity for whatever
Yeah,
reason
that's true. Yeah.
in their life, like that is helpful. I'm not I'm not read what you want to read, like
Oh,
read what you want
absolutely.
to read.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
But
This
I
is
will
us being
also
like
say
annoying.
there are incredible memoirs. I'm not far enough and gone to know whether it's incredible or not, but like
Mhm.
Beautiful Country,
Yeah, that
incredible
one
memoir.
is a really good one. Yep. I read
Um,
that one too. Yep.
oh gosh, I always forget the name of the Undocumented Americans. It's not exactly a memoir, but it's in that kind of vein. Um, this is our land, I think is maybe what it's called. Like there are some incredible memoirs written by people who, in my opinion, again, opinion,
Again.
have a story and a perspective and a
Yeah.
life that needs to be told and like that breaks open the world in new and interesting ways. And like I will say I do have Page Boy,
Oh, yep.
which is a memoir of a celebrity on my bookshelf. By Elliot Page.
Page.
I
Yep.
was also or I was told by again a good friend who reads very similar to me and knows I hate memoirs. She said you want to read this one. Like
Yeah.
I also the other thing with memoirs and particularly celebrity memoirs is they do not get good enough ghostwriters as far as I am concerned.
Yeah. The writing kind of suffers. Yeah.
So my friend who is in publishing said the writing is incredible in Page Boy. You will not be disappointed. So I mean, I might still be disappointed, but hopefully it won't be because
It
of
won't be the writing. Yeah.
But the memoirs that have been incredible are writers
Yeah.
who like that's their art form and
Yeah.
they have a story and a perspective that needs to be shared and that isn't celebrity, but it is important. And like that those are the memoirs that I'm
Yeah.
willing to put some time and energy into.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, I think like it's just a little hard for me, like it's just hard to get on board with celebrity memoirs in particular.
and
Um
they're so pervasive right now. Like we are in a
yeah,
moment of like
a
full
lot
celebrity
of
memoirs. Like
them.
everybody's
Yeah.
writing their memoirs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not like celebrities don't have problems. Like
No,
Britney Spears obviously like went through a horrific experience. Like there's no doubt about that,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
it isn't like they don't have
right,
problems, and they don't have issues and
yeah,
they don't have like stuff they have to struggle with. Like it
right,
isn't that at all. I just
right.
have like just a really hard time just like sort of like getting on board with sort of and not even know if it's supporting that, but just like there are so many people in this world whose stories just never get told, you
Right.
know? And just
Yep.
because you have a name and a face that's out there, why do we prioritize your story? You know?
It's super
Yeah.
fair. Yes.
And I think for me, especially like with the celebrity memoirs, that's kind of like that thing that just like rubs me a little bit wrong,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Why is your story so much more important than everybody everybody else's story, the common person's
Right.
story,
Right.
whatever that
Yeah.
is, you know what I mean? And I think that's just that thing that like
Yeah.
rubs me, and it's just
Right.
like, yeah, I'm all set. You keep your
So
memoirs.
if you've learned anything tonight, it's that Hattie and I don't care for celebrity culture, which is
Yes,
why we only have 250 followers, because we're not very good at
because
this.
we are terrible at this and we're pretty okay with that. So Lord help us if we ever become actual celebrities. Oh my god, that would be like
We,
horrifying. It's
it's
not
not
going to
going to
happen. Don't
happen, so it
worry.
doesn't matter.
That's not going to
That is
happen.
a worry we do not need to carry.
We're not going to worry about that ever because that's never going to happen, and we're really okay with that.
Nope.
But like, if it
Yep.
did, that would be like
Miserable
hilarious and
and ironic,
horrifying.
but
And it's not going to
but
happen,
yeah.
so not worried.
Mm-mm,
Anyway,
me
lots
neither.
of
So,
soapboxes. Oh my gosh, and we have so many more. That was like 3 out of the like 6 that we came up with in like 15
yeah.
minutes the other day.
Yeah.
So
And
we
I
have plenty
don't
more
know if any of
material.
those are really funny though. So I know we thought we'd be funny, but we're not really funny when we talk about our soapboxes because we're very earnest
Because we're so earnest,
about
we're
our
so
soapboxes.
passionate.
We're very
We're
passionate about our
passionately like
soapboxes.
hateful for these certain things that get
Right.
under us.
And again, one more time, and I think everybody knows this, but
I
one
hope
more
so. One
time,
more
this is
time.
all our personal stuff,
Yes.
and we do acknowledge that, and we are full on like read what you want
Please do.
to read
Please
what
do.
makes you happy, what brings you
Yeah.
joy. Reading should be a joy.
Yeah, it
And that
should.
joy can mean many different things to many different people,
Hmm.
but like,
And don't let
and
anybody like tell you
no,
like don't read. It's not even worthwhile to read celebrity memoirs because like
like,
celebrities like
yeah,
okay, that's not what we were saying at all. It was
yeah.
more of just like this is why I don't read.
That's why we don't read
So
them,
if you
but
want to go out and read those celebrity memoirs, please do.
do that. I
Hmm.
mean, like just
Please do.
read whatever brings
Whatever
you
you
joy.
want.
That is the
Yeah.
point.
Yep.
So,
That's what we
yeah,
do. We read whatever we want. And the thing is it's just like television and every other form of entertainment. There's going to be stuff that
yeah,
you like, and there's going to be stuff
yeah,
that you don't like,
yeah,
and there's going to be stuff that it's just a pet peeve, right? That
yeah.
it's just like, oh man, I wish they wouldn't do that. You know, it's
Mhm.
like Hannah loves fantasy, but it annoys the crap out of her that they have to have these like super long, dramatic series of books. That's just like that's a pet peeve. She's not going to stop
Right.
reading fantasy. I can
No,
guarantee you that. That's not going to happen.
no.
I am not going to stop reading women's history or history at all just
Yeah,
because
right.
some of these books are, presented as women's history and then
Yeah.
they're only
And
about the men
they're not.
around the women. Yeah,
No, no.
which makes me
Yeah.
crazy. You know.
So, but yeah,
Um, so
yeah.
yes, this is literally just our opinions
Yeah.
and just our soapboxes. That's all this
Our little
is.
soapboxes
Yep,
that
and
if you
we
want to share your soapbox with us, put it in the comments below. We would
absolutely.
love to hear your soapboxes as well because
Yep.
I'm sure there's more than enough
Hmm.
out there
There's
for
got
all
to
of
be
us.
some good stuff out
So,
there for sure.
yeah, but
Yep. Okay.
we're back in 2 weeks, Hattie.
Let me check my calendar.
Calendar. Hattie
We
has
love
everything
checking these
on
things before.
paper.
Yes, yes, we're gonna do our BiblioTalk March genre read on the 17th. 2 weeks. I picked mine. I do want to actually want to tell you guys what mine is. Because mine is sort of this follow up.
Oh, the
You
salt
had your
houses. That's what it is. Salt
Yeah, I
houses.
was like, Hannah, I can tell you what yours for. I had read all 4 of those ones that you posted, by the way. I had read all of them. I have read all of those. So I was like, oh, these are all really good. Anyway, the one that I picked,
Yeah.
this is sort of a follow-up. So last month we read memoir or biography,
Biography.
and I ended up reading biography of Peter the Great,
Yeah.
um, from Russia, for those who don't know, Hannah. And
I asked you once. I did remember after I asked.
so anyway, I read Peter the Great last month. This biography of Peter the Great. And so this month, our genre read for March is historical fiction,
Right.
and I was like, you know what? I found it. I wrote it down. I'm sorry, I can't even remember what it's called. Oh, it's called The Romanov Empress by
Oh,
C.W. Kortner, and it is
okay.
about the Romanov Empress, who was the mother of the last Tsar, who was Tsar Nicholas. Right.
Uh-huh.
So
Yep.
this is it's
Saw that in the
historical
Disney
fiction.
movie. Yep.
Hannah saw the Disney movie, so she knows who Tsar Nicholas is. Good job.
Thank you.
And this is his
Oh,
mom. Okay,
cool.
so it's historical fiction about his mom. I started already. I'm doing it on Audible. It was like 17 hours on Audible at 1.6.
At 1.6.
Yeah. Well, actually, actually, it's not even on Audible. I said Audible, but it's just an audiobook that I got from the library. So it's not even on Audible, actually. I kind of lied just now.
Oh,
But yeah,
wow.
but it's 1.6 and it was 17 hours. I was like, oh my goodness.
How long of a book is that, Hattie? How many pages did you look on Goodreads? How many pages that was?
I do not know, but I'm like, holy crap, that's a really long book, but it's so good. I'm just gonna say, like, this is the kind of stuff that I can like really like get
Mm-hmm.
into, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm loving. I don't even care that it's 17 hours
Yeah,
because
I
I'm
mean,
like,
that's
I'm
awesome.
so into
You're
it.
in
The
it.
writing is just like
Yeah.
really good, and I love a good historical fiction about a woman because they actually like write like the story as well, right?
Right.
There's
Right.
which is just so nice. You get like the
Mm-hmm.
history around it,
Right.
but then you just sort of get this nice sort of
One
fictional presentation of
fictionalized
yeah,
understanding of their life. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's super great too because I have like all this Russia stuff in my head already from Peter the Great,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and it's just sort of like building on,
That's super cool. That's really great, Hattie.
yeah. So that's one that I chose. So I'm excited. I
Yeah.
will be very excited to talk about it in 2 weeks,
Cool.
for our BiblioTalk. So
But yeah, for that size, yeah, you really have to get that read.
yeah, I know.
Ooh,
Got it.
that's huge.
Yeah, going a lot of walks. It's getting
Yeah,
nice
going
here,
along.
so yeah.
Well, that's nice. It was 70 degrees here today.
Wow, it was not that warm. I thought we were doing good at 65 and sunny, but
Yeah, it was really windy, but we'll be 40 for the rest of the week, which is
yeah,
still like super nice for the first week of March. So
yeah, that's
nobody's
not bad at
complaining.
all. Yeah,
But
we're
yeah,
gonna be in
it was
like I think the
70 today.
50s,
Oh, nice.
the 50s this week, so it'll be
Yeah,
fine.
yeah,
Just not as nice as today. It was just really calm and
yeah.
sunny and 65.
Well,
It was
that's
just kind
nice.
of like gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So
But cool, cool. Okay,
anyway,
so we will be back in 2 weeks
2 weeks.
with salt houses and the
The
Romanov Empress.
Romanov Empress. The
Romanov
Romanov Empress. Yep.
Empress. So, all right. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Good night and happy reading.
Happy reading. Bye, everybody.